My name's Brady Oakey, go by Brady Oak. Otherwise, everyone will call me Brady Oakley. And I've just learned to just go by Oak. It's a lot easier. So, yeah, my name is Brady Oak on Instagram. I'm 27 years old. I'm a competitive men's physique athlete. And most importantly, I'm a coach and the owner and founder of Tua Take Uncommon Action.
I was actually talking to one of your clients, Spencer,
Yeah, good old
just
Spencer. Yep.
just the other day here on the podcast and dropped the episode. Really motivated guy. Really, he speaks highly of you and kind of the influence you've had on him. It's really cool and good to have you on here, man. And I can't wait to kind of hear how you do it. How you not only just the X's and O's, but also the psychological side, the real that's I think the real secret of coaching is how you can kind of tap in to the athlete's mind.
Yeah, I actually really like that you said that because that's where I put, I would say, a majority of my attention. I did go to college. I did get my exercise physiology degree. I did get certified. I did all of that. I'm obsessed with learning as much as possible. As far as like information goes with fitness, but at the end of the day, I think the best coaches are the ones that psychologically can get someone, to the next level. And speaking of Spencer, I think he's the perfect example because when I met Spencer 5 years ago, he was just this, small, but I could tell he had good genetics and he was into fitness and things like that. And I kind of just told him, I was like, hey, I have this crazy idea. I'm going to coach you and you're going to do a bodybuilding show and we're just going to run with it. And he was just kind of, he was quiet and shy at the time. And he's just like, okay, I'm down. And here we are. So he looks amazing now. He's 4 weeks out and definitely the type of guy that everyone should follow. And he's going to go far in the sport. So he's the guy to follow right now.
Yeah, and it's cool because he doesn't come off as like, even though he's gained confidence, certainly he doesn't come off as like cocky or arrogant. He
No,
still
not at
has
all.
that humbleness about him. He understands like that it does take hard work. And I think that's really cool to see. And I think part of that does go back to a good coach, like helping an athlete understand that like it's the process. Just even if you have good genetics, whether the genetics are there for you or not, you still have all that hard work, all that discipline, all those days, the training, the eating, the sleeping. You have all that stuff that goes into it. And I think for for a person who really has a lot of self-awareness, it's hard almost not to be humbled by the process.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've worked on that quite a bit. Not to say that he was ever arrogant. I think it came natural to him, just to have the confidence. But the place where the confidence comes from is through his preparation. I mean, he is a very, very hard worker. And I can say the same about a lot of my athletes, very hardworking. And when you work very hard for a very long time and you stay focused for at this point years, I've been coaching Spencer for 4 years now, the confidence comes, and there's a dichotomy there because if you become cocky or arrogant in the sport, you're going to get let down because no matter what, there's someone always bigger, more shredded, stronger, whatever than you in fitness. You're never, you can't be number one. And so it's kind of like someone like Spencer, back to Spencer. I mean, he realizes that he looks very good, but there's still people that are bigger and better, which keeps him grounded. And most importantly, though, we let that confidence be an empowering factor and an attribute that makes us like, believe in ourselves to keep going and to stay consistent and put in the hard work, but nothing that's going to like hold us back and shackle us like arrogance would.
Right. And I think that's such a hard balance to find because in a sport where it's about that outwardly appearance, when it comes down to that day, it's about the outwardly appearance. I feel like
Yeah.
it'd be so hard to find the balance between really amping yourself up, hyping yourself up about, man, I'm doing great. This is because you want to have that positivity and all that, but also, like you said, staying grounded to reality where it's like, almost the Kobe Bryants of the world who are just, in the gym at uncommon hours and putting in
Mm.
the work, even though they would still say that they're the greatest on the floor for some reason they have the mentality of also being the hardest worker. And I think that's just such a crazy, uncommon, but also amazing attribute to have in a person.
I mean, absolutely. And that's what all the best have. To kind of go back, I've always been like, I feel like a student of the greats in whatever sport or even whatever, not even just sports, but in other aspects of life as well. I've always been like, okay, there's a certain reason why they're them. Michael Jordan, LeBron James, whatever. There's a reason why they're LeBron James and other people aren't LeBron James. So, like, what is that factor? And that's kind of almost the basis between like taking uncommon action and the brand and being uncommon. Those are the uncommon people, and what can we learn from them? And something about someone like maybe Conor McGregor, we could say, who is one of the greatest UFC fighters of all time. I think on the surface he can come across as arrogant, but if you really study him, you know that the only reason he sounds arrogant is because he has found a way to almost make his confidence even become stronger by putting it out there in the world. And that's what he talks about a lot, right? He like speaks things into existence. So from the outside perspective, it might seem as arrogance, but you can't doubt he's put in the work to be the special athlete that he is. And I think that's the difference, is like who's putting in the work and being real with themselves as well, not
Yeah.
being, able to speak it into existence, but not, again, like not letting arrogance just drag them down and stop progressing essentially.
All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break here just for a second. Let me tell you about Smoking Gun Coffee. They're a veteran-owned coffee company that strives to produce a quality coffee at an affordable price. They only buy coffee from small coffee farmers around the world with a cup score of at least 85. Each batch is roasted to order for maximum freshness. They also donate a large portion of their proceeds to organizations that help local communities, veterans, first responders, or you can donate to the foundation of your choice at the checkout by going to www.smokingguncoffee.com. That's SMOKIN Gun Coffee.
Yeah. And I think when it comes down to like that, having that balance, I think it comes down to having real life experience, real hardship, real struggles. And somebody like a Conor McGregor, who, if you know his backstory, he didn't have a job he loved. He was traveling a lot, for his job, and he was working hard hours. He was, I believe he was on, unemployment or whatever they call it, and over there for a period of time, and just he always had that belief in himself, but he was struggling, and I think that, that's something that's common to the greats, but it's becoming more uncommon in today's society, to where struggle is, we're taking away, and I certainly don't think that it's necessarily always a bad thing, but we're taking away so much of not the world struggle, but let's just say America. We're taking so much struggle away from the youth, and it's just the small things really that we don't really notice when it's one thing at a time. But whenever life becomes too luxurious, and that can mean different things to different levels, socioeconomically. But whenever life becomes too luxurious and too easy, we don't learn to struggle. And we don't learn how to
Right.
we don't learn what humbleness is. We just always assume it's going to be easy. And when it gets hard, we oftentimes fold. And so, do you find that that's a common trait in the athletes that you coach and the people that you coach, is that people who may have a background of a little bit maybe of struggle, or sometimes some of the best outcome clients?
I can say yes, and then I'll even add to it, because personally, I feel like you're really speaking to me, and not in the normal way where I come from a background that was super hard and I had to overcome all these things. I mean, I think in a sense everyone's overcome something, but why I cling to the be uncommon culture that Take Uncommon Action is built upon simply comes from the fact that I agree with you. I've come to the point in my life where I agree, like, hey, things are really comfortable. And I come from a background of just everything being, I don't want to say like easy, like just normal. I would say average is the perfect word. I come from an average family. My parents made an average amount of money. I grew up in an average small city. I grew up in an average suburb. I went to an average high school. I'm even average height. I'm like 5'10", whatever. Everything about my life was average. And what I realized when I looked closely, I compared to these greats, right, that we're talking about earlier. And then I compared the people I was around. And I learned something. I realized that everyone around me, including myself, is destined to be average right now because everything around us is easy, comfortable, whatever, average. And that scared me. And I realized, like, okay, you know what? I might not be going like through this insane drastic thing where I don't know, the worst thing that you could ever think of happening, like my parents abandoning me as a child and me, like, all these crazy stories that you hear, unfortunately, that happen in the world. That wasn't happening to me. But unless something happened, I wasn't ever going to grow out of being average. And I think that's when I started to, from a younger age, challenge myself, mostly physically through sports, fitness, you name it, and put myself into very uncomfortable positions to see how I would react in those situations. If I would fold under the pressure, or if I would be able to, be like a clutch, I don't know, a clutch Steph Curry 3-point shooter or something like that. Like, you never know unless you put yourself into those situations. Funny enough, I'm obsessed with bodybuilding now, but I started bodybuilding just because I wanted to see if I could do it. I saw these guys starving themselves to 5% body fat, 6%, 7% body fat. And I said, I want to see if I can do that. If I can, be eating 1,300 calories and doing an hour of cardio and not fold. That was the whole purpose behind it, is what we're talking about. And to see if, I really had it in me. So I guess, speaking a lot, but I think if people aren't, naturally given hardships in their lives, then it is up to them to put themselves through hardships to see if they can rise to the occasion and not be average.
Yeah. And I think a lot of what you're saying too is like talking about pushing your own limits and finding what they are.
Mm-hmm.
And I've talked about it kind of recently on here, but that's become uncommon. Comfort is definitely the name of the game right now when it comes to just everyday life. And, the short-term gratification instead of, let's see what we can do today to become better tomorrow. And not necessarily like a one rep max, but a one rep max style, mindset of what can I do? How hard can I push myself? What is my body? What is my mind capable of? Um, it's a
It's
scary place to
beautiful.
go, but it's
It's
also a
scary. Yeah.
rewarding place.
It's beautiful to meet your limits and just accept it. I think I've had that happen to me maybe 3 times ever in my life. And it is like a beautiful thing. I mean, I might sound insane right now, but it is a very special time. And I wish more people would find that. And that's partially why I do what I do.
Yeah, and I can relate to that. I know one specific time I was training for a marathon and I ran a marathon, and that was definitely that event pushed me to my limits.
Mm.
A lot of mental limits, but physically, mentally, questioning myself, doubting myself. Am I going to give up? It really run the gamut of emotions when you hit that point to where you don't know if you can do something. And you learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about what kind of person that you not just the person that you are, because that can be ever changing, but the person that you want to be. That you learn
Right.
that, do I want to, because it's not even really about the run. It's not really about the lifting or about the eating. It's about the development and like what what I'm actually going to get out of this. If I quit this, am I going to quit things in my life? And I don't want to go down that path. So I think, just figuring out what challenge you want to set, because in so many ways it doesn't really matter what the challenge is.
No.
It's a matter of completing it and learning from it. And if you don't complete it, learning from that as well, and seeing, what you can do better next time, because life is not it's not a game of winning, really. It's not a constant winning fest, for at least it shouldn't be, because if it is, you're not pushing yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is a freeing thing to find out what you're truly capable of too. And it's almost like you're not really living until you find that out. There was a time on my last prep, which was last summer. This was June leading into My first show, honestly, both shows were really difficult though. But my coach at the time actually did. I was at 1,300 calories. I was actually at 90 minutes of cardio a day, and I'd been prepping for 5 months. So things were getting pretty rough. I'm definitely the type that has to go really low on their calories to get shredded. I mean, normal guys don't have to go to 1,300 calories. My coach, his name's Cliff Wilson. He's actually coached about 150 athletes to their pro cards before. So he's seasoned. He knows what he's doing. And he told me that I'm the first male competitor he's ever had that has to go that low on their calories and that high on their cardio. But I had this moment where he lowered it, and you either run from the situation, or like fight or flight essentially happens in your mind. And I remember the moment where you ask yourself, like, am I really going to do this? And in that moment, I realized that, like, my coach could text me the next day and be like, hey man, we're just going to not eat at all today. Like, we're literally just not going to have any calories, and you're going to have to go do 6 hours of cardio. And I would have just been like, okay, like whatever, you reach that point where you literally will do anything. And that was very hard. I mean, I don't want to say it was easy by any means, because like, I was like, it was weird. I became like depressed for a few weeks, like very, very depressed, because it was just so hard on my body and I had no energy, I had nothing left to give. But I realized, like, reaching my limits, that like once you meet your limits and you just accept it, then suddenly this whole nother world opens up where you're finally able to see like what you're truly capable of. Like I said, not that I did eat 0 calories the next day, but I literally would have if he asked me to. And that's something that you want to talk about confidence building, people who have gone through that, your marathon, whatever it was, and you reach the wall in the marathon, the notorious wall, and you just say, you know what, it's okay. It's okay that it's hard. It's okay. I'm going to meet my end. That's fine. And just keep going anyway. Suddenly, man, the rest of your life's just easy. It doesn't matter. Any challenge, whether it's with business, anything, school, whatever, you're just like, I'm going to do this. It's fine. And that's confidence right there.
Yeah. It's building all these different character traits, I guess. And it's something that, unfortunately, because so many people aren't a part of this world, it seems like such a big world. I actually just talked about this. It seems like such a big world because we're in it, but it's such a small world compared to the rest of people who aren't engaged in the fitness lifestyle or a healthy lifestyle, whatever you want to categorize
Right.
it as. They don't really see that working out is more than just going to the gym and going through the motions. It's actually doing something for you. It makes me question, like, is this the reason that we're having all these, having all of these mental health issues, is because we aren't being physically active anymore?
It's certainly got to be part of it. That's for sure. A saying that I like to say is, no one got fit and regretted it. And it's true. Like, name one person that, changed their life physically and was like, man, I just wish that I was still really, fat and unhealthy and like couldn't breathe when I'd go upstairs. I miss those days. No one says that. I think we're onto something here with this whole fitness thing, because it seems to improve a lot of lives, whether you're trying to be a competitive bodybuilder or go pro or whatever, or you're just trying to become a slightly better version of yourself. Fitness is for everyone, for sure.
Definitely. So you kind of mentioned how you got into bodybuilding. It was kind of like a challenge for yourself.
Yeah.
What can I do? What am I capable of? At what point though, even going into anything, it's really fun, because when you start out at something, usually that's like when you're the most motivated to do it. You set the goal and it's like, I'm so amped up. But at what point, how long did it take you to kind of hit that, hit the quote unquote wall of, is this really something that I want to do? And then how did you kind of like get over that and make the decision that it was something that you wanted to do?
Yeah, excellent question. So, like I said, I was just going to do a bodybuilding show. This is back in 2020 now. 2019, I made the decision I was going to compete in 2020 without knowing COVID was going to ruin everything. But I set out to do that show, and immediately I kind of had like a 3-year plan, let's say. I was going to do my first show after that, check it off the bucket list. And then I was actually going to go into marathon / Ironman triathlon training and become kind of like a hybrid athlete, which is something I still to this day just love the idea of. And someday I will get there. But right now I just got to focus on bodybuilding, but we're getting there. So I was going to compete in May of 2020, and that ended up getting pushed back due to COVID. So funny enough, I actually started my prep January 11th, 2020 for my May show. Got canceled / pushed back. And then Summer Shredding was the other show I was going to do, which was in June, which got pushed back to July, which got pushed back to October. So I ended up prepping for 10 months for my first prep ever, which was a very tough experience. And I was coaching myself, and I can be very hard on myself. I learned to never coach yourself. It is just not smart at all, but we can talk about that later if you really want to. But I was on prep for 10 months and I made the decision. I mean, it was getting really bad. I felt like an awful husband to my wife, Maddie. Like I was just a shell of a human. I mean, starving myself for 10 months straight, basically. And I told her like, yep, never doing this again. As soon as I finish this show, boom, we're moving on. So I competed. And there's kind of two parts to this. Number one, I really enjoyed the stage. It was very rewarding to go through all of that and then have that one moment on stage. Very, very rewarding and addicting too. And then number two, I didn't bring my best package to stage. So I finished that show, and not only did I like, I kind of like that, but also too, I was like, I had regrets because I didn't bring what I thought I was really, truly capable of bringing. So I finished the show. I actually started immediately training for a marathon. I was going to do either the half or the full marathon in Austin that following February. So I had about 4 months. And I really enjoyed the training. It was awesome, but I kept looking over, at the weights and the bicep curls. And I kept, my mind started to wander a little bit. Eventually I started to naturally run a little bit less and lift a little bit more. And at one point I was like, man, I got to do this again. And that's when I hopped immediately back into another prep after 4 months of an off season. It was on paper, it's not very smart, but that led into my 2021 season, which was last year. And at that point, I realized something that although I have other goals in life that I want to accomplish within fitness and being a hybrid athlete and accomplishing an Ironman and all these things, right now I have this one chance to be really good at one thing. And rather than dying and saying like, yeah, I was kind of good at a few things, I want to be able to say that like I was great at something. So from then I have decided that I do want to go pro. I want to become an IFBB pro in men's physique. And that's just what I got to do now. So I don't spend too much time looking at my favorite Ironman athletes and seeing how they're doing. I kind of mentally block it out to stay focused for now, but my time will come. I got a long life ahead of me, but right now it's all about bodybuilding.
This podcast is sponsored by Smoking Gun Coffee, a veteran-owned coffee company that strives to give back to those in need. Don't forget to use code TWR10 for a 10% discount at checkout.
Yeah, and I think I kind of go through those same challenges of like wanting to do and experience different things. And
yeah, which is natural.
Right. It's so hard though. Yeah, I think I struggle with it to a certain degree where it's like, I don't want to say I get burnt out on something, but like I push myself and then I'm like, kind of get distracted. I'm like, oh wait, there's just other thing that I want to do. And it kind of like you said, you want to be the best sometimes at what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And I think that's definitely one of my struggles is I don't allow myself the time sometimes. The consistency of one action over and over and over again is it's something that I definitely do. I struggle with it, and it's helped me diversify. It's helped me do certain other things, but it has also held me back from being, I think, the best at a given thing. So,
absolutely. I mean, it's kind of like you're at a giant dessert table and you're there with your pie and you're like, man, this pie is really good, but that ice cream over there also looks pretty good. And I kind of want to taste that. It's kind of like that. But I think what I have found, especially in the last 12 months of my life, focusing more on bodybuilding, is the feeling of satisfaction of doing something and not just doing it to check it off the list, but like doing it well is unlike any other thing. So I'm not saying that everyone has to only do one thing, right? But like for some people, like maybe us, and especially what I've found in myself the last year or so, it is much more satisfying to go all in on something and put in the time. So I mean, this is my first off season where I feel really great about bodybuilding. I'm not going to compete for minimum another 18 months, maybe even longer. At this point, it'll be a 2 to 3 year off season, which sounds crazy to say, but I'm still just as excited today as I was, when I competed 10 months ago.
Yeah. And somebody actually asked me, are you going to do a bodybuilding show? Are you going to get into actually training and doing that, going that route? And I was like, kind of like what you said, I want to do it, but I don't know if the time is right. And I want to do it right. I want to commit to it. I want to give it the respect that it deserves, the process, and really see what I'm capable of, and not have the regret of like, I started it, but I had these other things going on, so I might have missed a few workouts or a few meals. And when you really, or at least when I do something, I do go. I'm one of those people that has to go all kind of in
Yeah.
on something, at least for a given period. And so if I didn't, I would definitely regret it. But it is something that I'm very interested in, especially being exposed to it more now. Growing up, I was kind of interested in like the old school, guys and things like that.
Right.
And I never really saw it as like something that a quote unquote normal person would do. It was just out there. It was like being a superhero almost. And now just talking to different people, it seems like an option. It's kind of weird how the things have shifted in my mind.
Yeah, I would say with a lot of confidence that bodybuilding is like the sport for people who have that all-in mentality. You can't do bodybuilding halfway. I mean, you just can't. It's not like, I don't know, let's say basketball where back to LeBron James, I guess, like if he skipped a few practices, like he'd still be really good. He could take a month off, wouldn't matter. Bodybuilding can't do that, especially if you're on prep. You can't, one cheat meal and you're gone. You can't come back from it a lot of times. So it's crazy, but there are some pretty crazy people out there that when they find bodybuilding, they're like, yep, this is it. This is my kryptonite, my drug I've been looking for my whole life. So
Yeah. And it's funny what bodybuilding brings to different people, kind of in the same way, but from different routes. It's like for one person, they do it because they love that lifestyle of like almost ABC lifestyle. Whereas some people don't have any structure, they need structure, they don't have any discipline, they need it, so they join and they gain it. And it's so
yeah.
funny though how there's just so many different routes and so many different kinds of people and backgrounds and jobs, and how it attracts so many different people, and it also accepts so many different people, who are, like you said, willing to actually put in the time and do it right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Agreed.
So you kind of mentioned, and I want to talk about it because I think it's something that a lot of people aren't actually aware of, that, coaches have coaches, and
Hmm.
the best people in anything have a coach. Michael Jordan had a coach. Everybody has a coach. Tell us a little bit, though, about why you, in your own experience, don't think it's a great idea to coach yourself.
Yeah, I absolutely don't coach yourself. I mean, for sure, especially if we're talking about bodybuilding. And so for me, for instance, I started my first prep in 2020, and I said, I'm just going to prep myself. I knew a lot of people had told me to not prep yourself, but I was like, nah, I got this. And I made all the mistakes that everyone who tries to prep themselves make. And I want to point out, I don't mind saying this. I'm going to sound super arrogant here, but like, I know what I'm talking about. I have plenty of coaching experience. I got all my credentials, all that stuff. I got all that in the books, right? So if anyone could coach themselves, it would be someone like me. And I still just, no, don't do it. What ended up happening is you cannot make good decisions for yourself when it comes to bodybuilding, especially when you're on prep. So I would look in the mirror and I just saw terrible, like, this guy's fat, this, whatever. So just calories kept going down, 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 down. I was on 1,200 calories at the end of that 10-month prep. And I still was positive that I was fat. Like, just seriously, I was like, I'm not lean enough. And so I ended up going into the show flat as can be. I did not fill up properly. And by this time, man, this is crazy. If you really understand bodybuilding, you'll know how crazy this is. But leading into the show, 2 days before the show, I consumed 800 grams of carbs to attempt to fill up. The day before the show, I had another 400, and then a lot on show day. So I had over 1,200 grams of carbs to help me fill out. And I still was flat as a pancake because of how chronically depleted I had made myself going into the show. I mean, there was no coming back. I didn't fill out for another 4 days after the show. And then I looked in the mirror. I was like, I look way bigger now all of a sudden. And I realized I made a mistake. But you just can't make you can't make objective decisions for yourself. You really can't. So it is crazy because going into my second show, I was like, yeah, I'm going to have a coach. And the way he peaked me was insane. It was like magic. And I just did exactly what he told me to do. And it worked. And I finally got to step on that stage and feel like I was bringing my best, which is a very, very satisfying feeling.
And what were kind of some of those differences, like in your own head and emotionally, going from the prep where you did it yourself versus kind of having a coach there? Like, I'm sure it was I'm sure it was a lot different when it comes to those two things.
Yeah, I mean, naturally, most people, including myself, are very hard on ourselves. And in my first show where I coached myself, I feel like you start to memorize every line you have in your body once you start to get shredded. And if you wake up one morning and one of your random ab veins aren't as sharp as they were like the night before, you will freak out. And so for me, what that meant is, okay, got to start doing more cardio, got to hit more steps, got to, lower my calories more. Just, I always kind of did whatever was just harder, when the answer most of the time was probably for me to eat more. That would have helped me. And I was very shredded for that show, by the way. Like, I had glute striations coming in. I was doing men's physique. Technically, I did do classic as well, but that was more just for the fun of it. A men's physique athlete, you probably don't need glute striations. And in my head, I'm like, I don't have glute striations for my first show. Like, I don't look like a natural pro bodybuilder right now for my first show ever. So I suck. So I should probably lower my calories even more. Like, that was my mentality. It was so messed up. But like you said, yeah. So going into the other one, all of a sudden, all the stress was off of my shoulders, and I'm being told exactly what to do by someone that I respect and who has absolutely proven themselves with their extended long list of competitors that have gone pro, won pro shows, etc. And that's it adds a certain confidence. I literally just stopped caring. I didn't question anything he said. I was like, whatever, let's do it. And I just did whatever he told me to do.
Yeah. And that's funny because I've heard that from so many different people where it's like it takes that weight off of your shoulders. You just do what somebody else tells you to do. And if you're disciplined enough to do it, it's just there. It's robotic. It's easier. And it's so weird to almost say that because, I think especially in this country, we're so like, we want to be the ones who make the decisions. We want to be the free will, the choice is
Yeah.
yours kind of thing. But it takes that stress away, I think, in so many different ways when you just have the plan. Here's what you got to do. If you do this, this will be the outcome. And that's
Yeah.
a cool thing.
It's not even as enjoyable. From experience, I can say this. It's not as enjoyable when you're coaching yourself, because the entire time, no matter how good you look, you still in the back of your head wonder, like, okay, but what if I had done this differently? Or maybe I should have done this. And just the constant nonstop second guessing yourself, it takes away a lot of the enjoyment and takes away from the present moment. So don't recommend, seriously.
Yeah. When it comes to coaching others, though, that have kind of been in that situation where they either didn't have a coach before, they had a coach who maybe wasn't, didn't know what they were doing as much. Like, how do you kind of bring that person in and say, hey, you can trust me? Like, how do you get somebody to trust you?
Man, that is a very good question. I'd have to ask my guys, like, hey, why do you trust me? But I mean, I think part of it is just I was obsessed in the beginning, especially when I started to coach specifically bodybuilders, and I do coach mostly lifestyle people, but a good chunk of my clients are bodybuilders. And I just became obsessed with learning as much as possible, learning from other coaches as much as possible. And when you do that for over half a decade, you pick up a lot. And if you're able to get your clients results, then that speaks for themselves. So early on, I knew that like if I was going to become a bodybuilding coach, I needed to have like some proof, some evidence that I was capable of it. And that's when kind of Spencer came in, because I met him. And I told him I was gonna like I don't even think he would have ever competed, to be honest. But I told him like, hey, I'm gonna coach you and you're gonna do a bodybuilding show. And I picked up a few other guys too, and I told them the same thing, and they're all just kind of like, okay, let's do it. But yeah, I coached them, and they were like my guinea pigs. And Spencer, we got him to win his first show, so that was pretty cool. My other guys did pretty good too, and we just got better every single time.
That's awesome. What do you think it is that especially maybe for lifestyle people who aren't on the same level of like crazy dedication to a specific program and a specific, eat this, do this. What do you think is the main thing? And that's such a generalized statement to make, but what do you think is kind of that main thing that oftentimes holds people back from really getting the results that they want?
Yeah. So, I mean, I know you're asking for probably just like one thing, but I guess two things in different spheres of our life. But like physically, like they're just not following the plan. If I have a client that isn't seeing that great of results, it's because they're not following the plan. That's it. But number two, I think mentally, and this is something I really try to push, people will only live up to the own expectations that they have for themselves. And people a lot of times aren't authority figures over their own lives. So like I made a video about this recently, but like if your teacher in school, told you to stand up, you'd stand up. If your boss told you to get something done, you'd do it. If your parents said no, you'd listen. But then when we tell ourselves something to do something, do we obey, or do we just blow ourselves off? Because a lot of people don't listen to themselves. And I try to get these people like, hey, like respect yourself, man. Like when you say you're going to do something, you got to do it. And if you do that over and over and over again, you'll get to the point where you will never let yourself down ever again. And the expectations you have for yourself will be so great that you wouldn't dare ever not follow through. So like on a prep, for instance, I've never cheated on my prep before. Most people do at least once. I've never done it. But because I've never done it so far, I'm going to keep never doing it because it's not an option in my head. So I try to kind of like rewrite the script for people, saying like, hey, right now you're not doing this because you're not listening to yourself, and because you're not listening to yourself, you're not following the plan. So let's start with the mental aspect too. Let's start respecting yourself a little bit more and following through. And then your actions are going to follow suit. And then boom, we're going to see the best results you've ever seen.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of multifaceted, but two things there. I think one is like being being truthful to yourself, not
Ooh.
lying to yourself. If you say,
Yeah.
like, kind of going back to it's a little bit of the same thing, but a little different from what you're saying too. But like if you're say you're going to do something, don't not do it, because then it establishes that pattern and you lose confidence in your ability. And then I think another angle on it is like, don't, you know, it's the words, it's a cycle. It's like the words that you say don't just go into the world, they go back into your own head and they can reconfirm what you believe, so, speak the words that you want your brain to hear. And it sounds like that's such a weird thing. It sounds a little,
No, I'm
Eastern, whatever, but like,
amen to that.
it has to start and end. And I think it does in your own head and
Mhm.
everything, people have the potential to almost achieve anything and be whatever they want to be and do what they want to do. But like you said, it comes down to, are you the hero in your story? Are you the victim? And a lot of times people, and it's sad to say, but I think we're being bred to be victims more nowadays, instead of the people who are like, no, I can do this. I can actually do anything.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a couple of things that came to my mind when you were saying that. There's a book called Self-Deception and Leadership, and it talks about lying to yourself, self-deception. And what I find in my clients, for instance, I can ask them like, okay, so you're not seeing results. So are you being accurate with your nutrition plan? And they'll say yes. And I'll be like, are you sure? And then it'll be like, yep. And I'll look at them and I'll be like, but really though? And then they'll be like, you know what? No. And I'm like, okay, there we go. We can lie to ourselves really easily. But yeah, as soon as you get rid of that, no more self-deception, man, like that's eye-opening. And what happens, there's this thing called self-efficacy, which is similar to self-confidence, but it's a little bit different. It's kind of like this inner belief system that we have in ourselves. And it's almost like a muscle because what happens is if you tell yourself you're going to do something or you set a goal, let's say, and then you don't follow through, you actually damage that muscle and you backtrack. This has to do with a lot of like really important aspects of health behavioral science and things like that. But the people who are able to just accomplish these amazing things, it's a lot of times it's not because they're such amazing people. They're average people, but they built up their self-efficacy. They started to follow through with what they said they were going to do. And eventually it builds so high that you wouldn't dare tear it down. You know, I mean, for me in bodybuilding, it's like the idea of me cheating or binging on a prep that terrifies me because I'd have to look at myself in the mirror the next day and the amount of shame I would feel knowing that like that's not me, you know, that's not what I do. I'm the guy that does what I say I'm going to do, you know, and to ruin that, like that would be so damaging because of years of following through that now, you know, once you do that, you become unstoppable.
Kind of in a similar but opposite light, what is kind of that number one thing that you look for, you know, when somebody comes to you and says, hey, you know, I want to be a client, I want to be a bodybuilder, I want to be really successful. You know, I'm sure there's a kind of a conversational phase that you go through before, you know, you start doing things. Is there a something that you look for, a phrase that somebody says, or just anything that kind of hints to success or maybe not success?
Yeah. Man, I really love this question. Um, I don't think there's a phrase, but I'm trying to kind of put into words that feeling that I get. I have a couple of guys right now. First of all, the guys that I'm coaching right now for summer shredding, they're all awesome. I mean, I could talk so highly about each individual. A couple I do want to bring up would be Jordan and also Justin. These two guys that are going to compete at summer shredding. This is their first time competing, so that's a big reason why I bring them up. And I mean, I could literally name other guys too that are similar to the situation, but specifically them, when I was talking to them, you know, I mean, obviously I could talk about genetics and like, you know, past like experience and stuff like that. All that matters, but like not as much as this. And it's this just raw energy that you kind of sense that someone has. And then they'll tell you, they might say something like, maybe this is the phrase, like, yeah, I'm the type to like go all in. You know, that's a big one right there. But you can sense this energy. And then all I'm going to do as the coach is be like, all right, you're a ball of energy. Here's some direction. Okay. Like they're the engine, I'm the steering wheel. And man, they just fly with it. So, like these guys, Justin and Jordan, like right now, man, they are so shredded. They are looking good. I haven't had a worry at all about them. I know they're 100% on the program. Not a day goes by where I'm like, man, I hope they don't cheat. I know they're not going to. And yeah, they're going to rock the stage. It's going to be a good time.
That's awesome.
I feel like everyone, you know, this is a deep philosophical belief that I have, almost spiritual belief I have. I feel like everyone has greatness inside of them. Some people, theirs is a little closer to the surface than others, but it's all there. Everyone has it. And what happens is, especially like with my motto and everything, when you start to take uncommon action, when you start to do the hard things, put yourself in those situations, that's when you start to discover it and let yourself express it. And we're all meant to, at some point in our lives, express it. Unfortunately, some won't and some will. But, you know, my journey is just to express my own greatness that's inside of me and then help everyone else express their own greatness because we all have it in us.
Yeah. And I think bodybuilding is an area where even if you're not going to be a pro bodybuilder, or not going to be, you know, even a bodybuilder who ever wins a competition, like it like we said before, it develops these characteristics and it opens up different doors. You know,
Mhm.
it's such a cool kind of thing when you start down a journey, when you start down a path, you never know where it's really going to lead you.
Yeah, I think one of the main lessons, I mean, man, there's like a million different lessons, but something that's really hit me recently is fully understanding patience and how good things take time. And bodybuilding, you can't rush it. I don't care what you say, I don't care who is taking what drug in the industry. Building muscle takes time, and getting shredded takes time. You can't speed it up. And it's like, if you want to go into the sport, I think a lot of people quit because they realize they're not interested in the whole patience game. But those who stick around are like, oh yeah, this is going to take some time. Going pro isn't like something you do overnight. But that's a really good life lesson, because you got to be planting the seeds. And let's say, like, I don't know, let's say I had the goal to go pro in 2024. That doesn't mean, January 1st, 2024, I'm going to start working really hard. Like, that means that I need to start working hard 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And the sooner we just come to these realizations, the sooner we can start planting that seed, because eventually down the road, it's going to pay off.
Yeah, and I think long-term gratification, plays a big role in that. Are you willing to
Yeah.
kind of suffer today for the good times tomorrow? And I was actually talking to another coach, and he kind of mentioned the same thing, patience. And he was like, you know, bodybuilding is it's glorious from an outsider's perspective, but when you're doing it, it's very it's monotonous activity done over and over again. And
Yeah.
it's just for that kind of moment of feeling like really, really good. And then you repeat the process and you start all over and you're suffering and you're getting up early and you're doing cardio and you're working out. And it's so funny though how that attracts people. It just blows my mind how that attracts anybody. The suffering for long periods of time for a short period of glory or whatever you want to call it.
There's certainly a lot of rinse and repeat in bodybuilding, and that's life though. Other things, I mean, I think we live in the generation of watching a really cool 4-minute YouTube video, or even a 15-second TikTok of I don't know, Gary Vee going from zero to millions of dollars, or this athlete becoming the best, whatever. And we don't take into account that, like, that's decades of work.
Yeah.
Like, and not just here and there, or some of the time, like literally just all the
Every
time.
day. Yeah.
So I mean, the sooner someone can master very persistent, every single day consistency for years, those are the people that get to make those really cool 4-minute videos.
Definitely. What do you think you've learned about yourself over those last years of doing this, that, especially working with other people? Like, I feel like that's such a revealing thing when it comes to ourselves. What do you think you've learned about yourself throughout that journey?
Something I had a very big realization last year. I feel like every prep you kind of learn something. You learn a lot, but there's always that one thing that really sticks out the most. This past one, what I learned is, for me, being uncommon, which is all I want, right? That's my goal in life, is to be uncommon. For me, that means not being hard on myself. I discovered that being hard on myself is the easy way out, because I've done that my whole life. If I really want to level up and be great, I actually need to stop being hard on myself, because I've realized multiple ways that being hard on myself was actually dragging me downwards. I was going backwards because of it. And as soon as I started to become a little bit kinder and nicer to myself, which is, it's funny because you would think that's the opposite, right? You would think like, no, you got to be hardcore. You have to hate yourself. You got to look yourself in the mirror every day and be like, you're crap. You're going to be nothing. And then you got to go and then listen to hard rock in the gym and push it, whatever. It's funny because for me, and for a lot of people like me, maybe you as well, that's kind of easy. Like, that's the default button. If you really want to become great, you got to start to like, again, discover that greatness inside of you, and speak a little kinder to yourself. So I've stopped certain things that I think a lot of people would think is like hardcore, but it's my way of actually being hardcore. It's like the opposite. I hope this makes sense, but yeah, I've learned that I need to be a little nicer to myself, believe myself a little bit more, speak more kindly, like in my head about myself. And I realized that that's what's going to keep me going, because something I'm really good at is being consistent. Like I'll be consistent all day long, but only if I maintain the vision I have. And that only comes like when I'm kind of like this new reinvented version of myself, where I'm not just always putting myself down mindlessly, because that's easy. And I don't want to be doing the easy thing anymore. If you do follow Conor McGregor, I think he's a really good example of this. But he had 2 fights with Nate Diaz. First fight he lost, which was one of his first losses, and that was a big shock. But what's crazy is he went into the rematch fight, and he just had a look in his eye that like he knew he was going to win that rematch. Like there wasn't a doubt in his mind that he was going to win that fight, but he had just lost. And that's pretty incredible to me, because you can't fake that, but I think that's because he's kind to himself. Let's say he loses a fight, and when he loses, he still thinks he's better, and he believes he's better. And then he goes into the rematch being like, yeah, I'm going to beat him because I'm better. I'm the better fighter. Of course I'm going to win. And it's like, the natural, like logical thing would be like, yeah, but bro, you just lost. So, maybe you're not going to win this one. But if you asked him, he'd be like, no, I'm way better. I'm definitely going to win this. So that's just kind of like maybe an example to use of kind of the mindset I'm trying to go forward with, moving on. And something I try to distill with my athletes as well is just like an overwhelming, strong belief system in themselves, again based on confidence, not any sort of arrogance or anything like that.
Yeah, and I think also based on kind of reality too. I think that's a good point to start at. Because when you're hard on yourself, you're oftentimes like going back to your prep where you coached yourself. You were super hard on yourself, but it wasn't based in a spot of reality. It was kind of just it was up there in your mind somewhere. But
I
yeah,
was
man.
blinded by emotions is a good
Yeah.
way to put it. Completely blinded by like, oh, I have to go harder, but I wasn't getting better. The goal is to look the best on stage, not to look like the most starved on stage. No, you don't win for suffering the most. You win from looking the best.
That's smart.
So all things I've been learning recently.
Yeah, no, that's a really smart way to look at it, and that's true. The best at anything. It kind of goes back to the people who work the hardest aren't always the ones who are rewarded the most. It's the people who work the smartest, and
Yeah.
you have to work hard and work smart. But if you just work hard, like you're probably not getting as far as the person who does it the smart way, and that definitely goes back to a lot of education and learning how to work the smart way. Struggles. Going through the times of coaching yourself certainly was a learning opportunity. When it comes to bodybuilding, getting back to that, when it comes to someone who comes to you or thinking about coming to you or just thinking about in general wanting to bodybuild, what would be your advice to that person?
Yeah. I think a lot of it is stuff we mentioned. For instance, having like a belief system in yourself, because especially what happens on prep is, and this is what's going on with my team right now, doubts, roller coaster every single day. You wake up in the morning, you're like, I look insane. I'm going to win the show. 2 hours later, you're like, what am I doing? I'm going to get last place. By lunchtime, you're back to being the best ever. It's a roller coaster. But if we can just manage to build that self-confidence and almost make a decision like, hey, we're starting this thing. Let's just start like right now. We're going to believe in ourselves and get down to like the truth of the sport, which is at the end of the day, it's a subjective sport. The judges, I mean, you can look the best and not win because maybe the judges preferred something else. You can have a winning physique and not win because some freak showed up. That's the realities of the sport. So I tell them, like, have a winning mindset and a winning attitude. Do this sport to win. But then when it comes down to it, the only way that you can really win is by bringing your best. And then the next time you compete, bring your new best and go, just keep going like that. A lot of dichotomies here, right? Like it's a balance in everything. Like have a winning mindset, but don't worry about winning, but it's the truth. So we go for like a confidence mindset that's balanced. And I think that's the best way to put it. And if we can do that early on, then we're going to have a smooth prep. Use your emotions in your workouts to push you and drive you, but then don't become so emotional that if you don't get first place, you're going to quit, which happens. And I've coached people like that as well, that, I mean, after their show where they don't win, they're just like, what am I doing? I'm like, you got to enjoy this whole journey. If you're only doing bodybuilding so you can win your first show, then that's not a good reason to do it. And there's several reasons. There's several good reasons and bad reasons to do bodybuilding, but that's one of the bad reasons, is just to win. And it's out of your control. You just got to really understand that.
Yeah. And I think kind of like we said, learn through the process. Take advantage of, don't think because you didn't win that it was a waste of your time. Take advantage of those months of years of training and pushing yourself and finding the discipline and learning how to apply it in other areas.
Yeah, I think winning can do a lot of damage for an athlete, and obviously losing can too. But I think my best athletes, we're bringing up Spencer a lot in this one, but the best thing that ever happened to Spencer was winning his first show and then not getting first call-outs his second show. Best thing that ever happened to him, because he tasted what it felt like to win, and he's like, I want to keep doing this. But then he also realized that there's better people than him. And that right there, man, that lit a fire inside of him. And he got a lot better because of it.
Perfect. Kind of that perfect concoction. It's the Michael Jordan not making his varsity team kind of thing. It's the life events that sometimes suck that really do push you to do the best that you can do. And embracing that this thing that does suck, embracing it, not letting it, make you quit. Just imagine what the world would be like if Michael Jordan never played basketball again after that.
Yeah. Bruce, whatever his name is, the fighter actor
Bruce
guy.
Lee.
Yeah, Bruce Lee. Can remember. Lee's a very easy name to remember. Can remember it. He said, be like water. And I'm starting to really understand a little bit what that means, because it's like, no matter what happens, you can turn it into a victory in some sort of way. If you're fluid, if you're like water, if you let it. So winning first place can be the best thing for you, because, okay, now you tasted victory. Now you want it again. Getting last place can be the best thing for you, because, all right, now you know what it takes and what those guys look like in order to be victorious next time. Getting somewhere in the middle, that could be a victory for you too, if you be water, right? Because now, all right, I'm pretty good and I beat a whole lot of people, but I'm not as good as I could be because I didn't win. So it's like being able to just find the good, and no matter what happens, that's powerful right there.
Yeah, no, that really, I like that quote as well.
There's some people on earth, and again, I believe everyone has greatness inside of them, and it's, people like us, we got to help them find it, right? But like, people don't even think about that stuff. They, like, you ask them like, what's your belief about this, and they're like, I don't know, I'm just here to just wake up and just whatever happens, I guess. It's like, no, like, get excited about things. When you watch a motivational video, do you get motivated? Is there something inside of you, or are you just like dead, like, I don't know, like a potato, like, So I think like those greats, they think about these things, and if we want to be like them, we got to be thinking about these things as well.
Yeah, constantly thoughtful. Don't take things for what they are. Really think about it and make it your own kind of deal. And that's something that I've tried to definitely do more of in my life, and make things my own. And it's been really fun, just like taking it to this podcast. It's been really fun to talk to different people and have a conversation and make a connection, and do all those kind of things, making the world not, I don't want to say like conform to me, but I guess almost like going back to it, being like water, taking the opportunity to have a conversation and just turning it into something, whatever that may be, and finding the good in it and understanding, the perspectives of it. And no, it's been really cool. And it's been really cool getting to talk to you on it tonight, man. I really do appreciate your time and your commitment to health and fitness.
Yeah, well, I appreciate, being here and getting invited on. And I'm kind of, I do podcasts as well, but I'm not as much of like someone to have as many guests as you've had on. So I'm almost jealous of your situation where you get to, gain wisdom from like little bits here and there. Hopefully I've provided some sort of wisdom that you haven't heard before, who knows, but that's pretty cool. Cause it's like, I don't know. It's like you get a almost like read a book about someone's life in like an hour-long conversation and get the good parts out of it and add it to yourself and move on to the next.
And if you want to promote yourself, go ahead and do it. Any social medias or anything like that?
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram and YouTube at Brady Oak Fitness. I do have a podcast. It's called the Tua Cast, TUA Cast. And we talk, it's mostly mindset with a little bit of fitness, basically, just how to level up and be uncommon. My team page, my brand page is Take Uncommon Action with periods between the words on Instagram. And I'll tell you what, I don't post on the page. I have like a branding guy that does it, and he makes it look so good. It's beautiful. I'm like so impressed with how it looks. So go check out that page, and I'm trying to grow that page. So go to the Take Uncommon Action page and give it a follow. And we're going to be highlighting a lot of our clients as we gear towards the end of the preps here. And then obviously our next team, which we're building right now for the October show, because there's another show in October that we're going to be doing as a team. So a lot going on, but yeah, that's where you can find me.